And liftoff, 2023 Baseball Over Under podcast. And Dave, with the perfect timing of the baseball in the camera, we are here for Over Under Baseball Over Under's 2023 podcast. Dave Brown, Shane Sandersfeld, Steve Geller. Welcome to both of you to this year's podcast. Anything that you want to share before we start off and kick things off for this season?
No, I want to kick things off.
Okay. Well, as I said before we got on the air, MLB has cut down their spring training games 26 minutes with the fast pitch clock. So I'm going to try to do the same with this year's podcast. And with that, I'm going to ask you guys a quick question. As we get ready to pick all these games, let's just take a quick look at the new rules, and I'm going to run down 4 of them. Bigger bases, that'll lead to more stolen bases, along with the pickoff moves only being limited to a couple throws over before balks are called on there. No shift this year. And timing in the batter's box. Games have moved much faster, as I noted, 26 minutes faster in spring training. Last year, I think it was 3:01. I think it's 2:35 this year average. And then the big one, which I think goes into our over-unders, is the schedule. This year's schedule is a lot different. Just going to read this really quick. Teams play 5 fewer games against division opponents. Instead of playing 1 series against every team in the other league, teams will continue to play their rival in interleague 4 times, twice at each ballpark. Teams will face their four division opponents 14 times instead of 19, 7 home, 7 away, for a total of 56 games. They'll also face the other 10 teams in their league 6 times apiece, playing a 3-game set at each ballpark. Rather than 16 interleague games, teams will play 46 such games on the schedule, 4 against their geographic rivals and 3 against the other 14 teams alternating ballparks annually. So I'm doing a good job here of speeding things up after reading that whole big mouthful. What do you guys think about those 4 things? Any one of those things jump out to you as things that can really affect the over-unders before we get into them?
I think for sure the thing that's going to affect the over-unders is the schedule change. And that's something that I think you really have to take a look at as we go into this season, because playing, different divisions, if you're playing a tougher division, that's going to be, not as much of a benefit for you. If you're in a bad division, like you had to take a look at Cleveland, Minnesota, the White Sox, they have a very different schedule this year than what they're used to, beating up on Kansas City, beating up on Detroit. So I think that's really going to come into play, especially when you look at that division.
You're right. It eases up on the teams like the Orioles, and it makes it a lot harder for the teams in the East, in the Central. Both.
Yeah, well, I've had some discussions about this with other people, and I'm not sure. I think for the really good teams, it's going to be a big difference, and I think for the really bad teams, it might be a big difference. Teams in the middle, I'm never quite sure exactly how much. Even last year, not sure how much the Orioles benefit from playing like the Twins more instead of playing the Rays more. So we'll see. But like I said, I'm going to speed this up. So I'm going to get into the first division, and let's jump right into the one that we always love to start off with, the NL West. Actually, we did the AL West last year, but this will be the NL West this year. Just jumping in. So I've got records for our last 3 years. And for the last 3 years for us, Shane, you were 37-35, best bets 7-7. Last year, you were 13-17 and 1-4 in best bets. We didn't have a great year last year collectively. Dave, you're 47-43, 10-4 best bets. In 2022, you were 500, 15-15, 2-3 best bets. I'm 500 overall, 45-45, 8-6 best bets, 14-16 last year, 3-2 best bets. Don't let the records deceive you. We know what we're talking about. We've had some good years in here. Last year was a little bit of a rough one. We were just getting used to a full year, after we put things together.
We didn't even know how many playoff teams there were last year.
That's true. Yes. We've got that all. We've got the new rules. We've got the playoff teams. We are all ready to go. So with that, I'm going to start off in the NL West, and I'm just going to give you a couple teams. We're going to start at the bottom and go up. Colorado sitting at 65.5 and Arizona 74.5. Shane, do you want to just start us off real quick with your thoughts on maybe those 2 teams, and then we'll kind of keep rolling along as we go here?
I think it's very fitting that we're starting with the team that I have down as, quite frankly, the worst team, I believe, in all of the NL, the Colorado Rockies. I don't find a lot of value here. I know it's a low number at 65.5. I took the under on these guys last year. I'm taking the under on them again. The Dodgers and Padres are going to do what they do. I think San Francisco could be a team that's a lot better this year, and that's going to make it difficult for Colorado. And a lot of people like the Diamondbacks as well. So I just find Colorado to kind of be that odd man out in the division. And I see the under. Who was the other team that you wanted there, Steve?
The other one was Arizona at 74.5.
Arizona, I like them a lot. And as I mentioned, I think Arizona is due for a bounce back. I think that they're going to battle out with San Francisco in that trying to get that third spot. And I think Arizona is an overplay.
Dave, your thoughts? Do this Arizona 74.5 because we just did that one. Then we'll go Colorado 65.5.
I agree with you, Shane. I think Arizona is a very sexy pick this year. People expect them to improve. I expect them to improve, but not as much as you expect them to improve. I'm going under on Arizona, and I'm going under on Colorado too.
Wow.
Last year, Shane had a best bet on Arizona, and they ended up going over. He's going over again, and that worked. Dave, you were the only one out of us who went over with Colorado last year, and they actually were over. If you look at Colorado, and I checked them out, their projections both have them over the 65.5, just tiny bit over. Last year, they won 68 games. I don't like this Colorado team much either, and as I'm looking, I don't see anything that gives me a lot of excitement. So I think I'm going to go with you guys with the under for that. So I think we're a clean sweep across with the under. For Arizona, I do agree with Shane, actually. I like this Arizona Diamondbacks team. It's a really tough division. To me, you have to decide what you want to do with Arizona or the Giants, but I also think we have to get out of that mode of thinking with the fact that we're not playing 19 games against each division. So I think that's going to change things a little bit. But as I go along, I do like the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think this is a team that has, a pretty good lineup. They have Corbin Carroll, possible NL Rookie of the Year, Jake McCarthy, young outfielder. It's a little bit like Evan Longoria is sitting in the middle of the lineup, not a great lineup, but I like the pitching. So I'm going to go over with Arizona. As we go to the top, I'm going to give you the next two teams. San Francisco, 81.5. We're going to go San Diego, 93.5. I'm going to start with you, Dave, on those two teams.
San Francisco 81.5. Wow, that's a 500 team, and that's exactly a 500 team. I'm going to go under because I think they're going to be exactly 81 wins.
And San Diego sitting at 93.5. What do you got for that? Last year, Shane was the only one out of us who went over with San Diego. Me and you went under, and they actually did hit the over.
Yeah, I think they're going to be over this year. I may be it may be recency bias. The last games I really paid a lot of attention to were them destroying the Mets. They looked so good, but they looked so good against the Mets all season last year. They're a tough team. Great pitching. I'll go.
Yeah, I think for the Padres, the one thing that scares me a little bit is, Musgrove just got hurt. Their pitching staff's solid, but I just love that lineup so much. So I'm going to have to agree with you. When I look at the lineup up and down, I think this team is equipped to hit the over. I'm going to go over on San Diego. I think I'm going to go slight over with San Francisco. I don't love the Giants, and 81.5, that seems about right. But I just feel like this team kind of knows what they're doing organizationally. Last year, they took that big step back, but that was coming off a ridiculous season where they way overachieved. So I'm going to get them to 82 or 83 wins. What do you think, Shane?
I'm going to go with you as well. I think there's a major overcorrection here. 2021 was a fantastic season for the Giants, probably way more than anybody could have expected. And I think their number was too high last year. Now I think their number is too low, and I'm not falling for the trap. I think they're going to bounce back. I don't think that's really that difficult a number for them to hit at 81.5, especially if they can get up on Arizona. So I like them for the over. And then with San Diego, I'm going to ride the over again because I think it's going to come down to who wins the series between the Dodgers and the Padres. I think they're going to get the upper hand, and I think that's going to get them over 93.5.
Here's the one that always fakes us out a little bit, the LA Dodgers. And Dave, you fell for the trap last year. Vegas gives you a super high number and says, you're not gonna bet the over on this. You don't think they can get this high, and every year they do it. Every single year they do it. 96.5 this year. You know what? I don't think they're gonna do it this year. I actually really like this lineup. I mean, Betts, Freeman, it's always a good lineup. Vargas is an up and coming prospect. The only thing that scares me a little bit is I just think that, the pitching, Dave, I remember you didn't like the Angels last year because they were leaning on Syndergaard. Well, Syndergaard's on this team this year. Arias and May, they're good. Kershaw, obviously not even close to what he did. They turned Tyler Anderson, Andrew Heaney, and Gosselin into great pitchers last year. I don't know how these guys pitched as well. Gosselin starts off hurt. I'm going to go slight under for the Dodgers. And I actually think the Padres are going to win this division. So I'm going under. Dave, what do you have on this one?
You know what? I'm going to go under also, and I'm going to say that they're not even going to care. Let me tell you this. I think baseball is going to change a lot because of what the Phillies did last year. The Phillies were a middling team last year. Mediocre. That's it. Mediocre. They got hot at the right time. They backed into the playoffs, and then they just got hot. So it just goes to show you, just get in. That's all you have to do is get in. Don't try to win 100 games. Just get in. And teams are going to rest players now, go to 6-man rotations a little bit throughout the season. They're going to coast a little bit more. They're not going to try to win the 103 games. They're going to go under, and it's because they're going to want to go under.
So you're saying that we're going to follow the NBA and just have nights off for guys and do all this stuff and just
that's what we're leading. That's what we're leading to. The Phillies led the way. It's going to be the downfall of what I like about the game, but that's a podcast for another time. And I'm elongating it when I wanted it shorter.
But I would say too that the Braves almost did that the year before too, when they kind of coasted for half the year and then won the whole thing. And Shane, just leading to that, he was the best one at picking them. So I'm going to go to him for the Dodgers as well. What do you think to round out our opinion on the Dodgers?
Well, before I got here, I went to a 10 and under meeting for my son's baseball team, which we call 10U. Well, what we're calling the Dodgers this year is 3U, because I'm taking the under as well. So we're all across the board going under. I can't sit here and brag up the Padres, brag up San Francisco, and brag up the Diamondbacks, and then come back and do a fourth over on the Dodgers. I just don't see it happening. And I'm kind of with Dave. I think they've lost a little bit of the intimidation factor. I don't know if they're going to be all in to try to hit some huge number. Just don't see it happening. I'm going the under as well.
I can't believe Vegas lured all three of us into the trap. So beware, everybody. This is a team. I feel like the last 7 or 8 years that they've covered this, but I think all three of us are in agreement. This is a little bit of a step back for the Dodgers. They don't need to be. They won 111 games last year and didn't even make the World Series. So yeah, I get what you're all saying. So let's fly on over to the AL West, our other favorite division to start with. As we know, we go to the divisions that our favorite teams are in last. So we're starting with these divisions first because none of us have AL or NL West interests. Dave, I'm going to start with you. And again, we're going to start towards the bottom of the division. We've got Oakland Athletics, 59.5. And then we've got Texas Rangers, 81.5.
Whoa. Oakland, say that Oakland number again.
59.5.
59.5. Yeah, they're bad.
I can start reading you off some people from the lineup, because when you start reading the lineup, 59.5 starts to look pretty good.
Yeah. We were texting earlier. We don't know one person. We've never heard of anyone in their rotation.
I'll give you the rotation real quick. Kyle Muller, Shintaro Fujinama, Ken Waldachuk, who came in the Frankie Montas trade, James Caprillion, and JP Sears, who also came in that Frankie Montas trade.
Yeah.
Paul
Under.
Blackburn is also there too, but he's injured.
Under. Dave Stewart ain't walking through that door.
Who do you have for Texas sitting at 81.5? That one's a little bit more difficult because they've actually loaded up that rotation pretty well.
They loaded up. They are one of those teams that remind me of those Padres of the late 2000s, who loaded up and then had to break it up midway because it just wasn't happening. They loaded up. I think they loaded up to get to 500. 81. Let's go over, but I say they're going to be 82 wins. They're a 500 team.
Shane, again, 59.5 Oakland and 81.5 Texas. Who do you got out of that?
This is scary for me to be in lockstep with Mr. Brown, but I also, after hearing you reel off that Oakland rotation, I don't know how you don't hear those 5 names and break out your wallet for the under. Definitely the under on Oakland. I know 59.5 is a scary number to take the under, but I think you'll be safe there. And then Texas was, of all the teams that we are going to project, I thought that was the one that's closest to where they might end up. I like what they've done, but I just think that's a division that can be really tough. I have them right around that spot. I'm going to go 82, 83 wins and give them the over as well.
You know what? I'm actually in agreement with both of you. As much as I actually, this Oakland one feels like a little bit of a trap. It feels like Oakland does their best work when everyone expects absolutely zero out of them. But I jumped on this Oakland under last year because they were terrible last year. And I feel like I know this rebuilding process very well, having gone through it as an Orioles fan for the last 4 years. they're in year 2 of let's suck really bad for 3 years and then we'll stick our heads up and see what we can do. I'm going to go under as well. For Texas, the one thing I feel like, I hate putting it on one guy, but Dave, don't you feel like if they can actually get a healthy Jacob deGrom, this is an easy over. If he can set the tone and actually pitch 25 games or so for them and pitch really well, don't you feel like that sets the tone for this? You've watched it with the Mets. I mean, if he's like 15-6 and has like a 2.50 ERA and he's good, don't you think that this opens up things for that team to be a lot better?
No, I've seen him good and the Mets stink, and I've seen him barely pitch last year and the Mets had the second most wins in their history.
Okay. Well, like I said, if you want to go with that, I think that this opens it up. I like that because to me, if he could just pitch and do pretty well for them, I think that opens up a lot of things. Then you got Eovaldi, you've got Haney in this rotation. Perez was okay last year. Gray's good. To me, you got 5 pretty good starters. And I don't like just buying pitchers and throwing money at it, but there does come a point where when even your 5th starter is a pretty solid rotation guy, that I think it's easier to go over. So I'm going to go over as well with Texas. I spent all that air just to agree with you guys. So AL West, next ones we're going to go with the LA Angels, 81.5, and Seattle Mariners, 86.5. I'll go back to you, Shane.
Well, you know the old adage, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th times, shame on me. We're going to go for 8. I don't know why I keep doing this. I keep falling for the Angels over. I'm going to fall for it one more time. They are tempting me even more with this number right at the Mendoza line. But here I go. I'm going to take the Angels to do it again. And they're going to have their entire rotation depleted through 2 weeks. And I'm going to be in bad shape. But I'm going to roll with it. I'll go over on the Angels. And then I think Seattle comes back to the pack. I have them closer to 500. I don't see them getting to 86.5. I'm taking the under on the Mariners.
Okay, I'm going to jump in, and I actually agree with you on the Angels. Usually I'm a big proponent of buying low on the Angels because they're always overrated. Ohtani and Trout pretty much guarantee they're overrated. At this point, Trout is actually a little underrated. I mean, he gets hurt a little bit more often. People don't really expect much out of him. But the one thing I'm going to say I actually really like about the Angels is this rotation. Tyler Anderson, I think, is a big add. He's been pretty solid and consistent. Reed Detmers became a pretty good pitcher towards the end of last year. I think Ohtani's a little bit overrated, even though he's really good. And I also think Sandoval matured last year and was a good starter as well. I actually do like over 81.5 for this team. And I'm also going to say that I like over for the Seattle Mariners. The one thing I really love about the Mariners is the Luis Castillo. They didn't have him until the end of the year last year. Now they have a bona fide ace on this staff. And I just think that makes this team a lot more dangerous. And I realize that I'm picking Texas, LA, and Seattle is over, and that might not be the smartest thing to do. But I really love this Seattle pitching staff, and I think the lineup is good enough. And they also have a really good bullpen. I'm going over on Seattle. What do you got, Dave?
Yeah, I really like Seattle too. I'll go over. I don't think it's going to be way over, but they'll hit 90. I think they'll hit 90 wins. Angels is an anagram for 78 wins. If you mix up the letters, it comes to 78 wins. Under. Always 78 wins for the Angels.
You'll probably be right at the end of the day, and we'll probably realize that we went all the way down this road. The 2 LA teams are just trick traps waiting to happen all the way across the board in here. But Shane and I will walk down that path and wait for the trapdoor to suck us under. The top of the division, and I'll start off this one, Houston Astros, 97.5. Now, we thought their number was crazy last year. Dave and I went on the over. Shane went on the under. They won 106 games last year. I asked you this question last year, Shane. How good do you think Justin Verlander will be? And we've got about 4 or 5 things you can pull out of the podcast where if you pull them out, you're like, yeah, let's take that back that we didn't say that, because both of us were like, I don't know what he'll be able to do. And of course, he goes out and wins a Cy Young. So you take him away from the team, but it's still a really good pitching staff and obviously a loaded lineup. I just go back to what Dave said for the NL West. I just don't see the purpose in Houston putting the pedal to the metal the whole year. And I don't love this team. And with a better Seattle and with 3 overs in Texas, LA, and Seattle, I think this division is actually a little bit more competitive than it's been in the past. And I think it's going to be a fun division. So I'm going to go under for Houston. What do you got, Dave?
I'm going over. I agree with you that I don't think they'll be pedal to the metal. I think, though, that they'll accidentally win a lot of games against Oakland and LA, even if they don't even try.
What do you
So
got,
I'm
Shane?
going over.
You're going over.
I'm going to go under. I just think 97.5 is too high. They can't keep this up. They can't keep winning games like this. 97.5, that's a lot of wins to try to hit. And, it does me well to hear you say you've got Seattle, LA, and Texas all hitting the over, Geller. So I'm going to hope that happens and Houston comes back to the pack, and I'll go under.
We'll see. I always seem to swing and miss at a few of these. So there are a couple shots there with Seattle and LA, and especially LA, Shane. And I think we're both kind of walking out on that wire and hoping it doesn't snap or we're midway through it. So we'll see what happens. So we go to the next division. The next division is the AL Central. This one tripped us up a little bit last year, but I'm going to go to Dave to start this one off. I'm actually going to start off at the top of the division. And the reason why I'm starting with Dave, you are 3-0 on the Cleveland Guardians, Cleveland Guardians. Let's bleep that last part out. Cleveland Guardians, the last 3 years, Cleveland is sitting at 86.5. The other team I'm going to give you is Minnesota Twins. They are 84.5. Cleveland 86.5, Minnesota 84.5. What do you got?
They're both over.
Both over.
86.5 seems low to me. Cleveland's going to win 88 games and Minnesota's going to win 85 games, and they'll be neck and neck all season.
Who do you have on that, Shane, out of those two? Again, 86.5 Cleveland, 84.5 Minnesota.
86.5 seems high, but I'm a big believer in Cleveland, like I'm always a big believer in St. Louis, and you've touched on this too, Steve. Just some organizations just do things a little bit better. I'm going to roll with Cleveland, and part of it is because I have Minnesota under. I think Minnesota will be Cleveland's biggest competitor, and I think they'll handle business like they did with the Twins last year. So Cleveland over and Minnesota under.
Yeah, you said it last year, and I'm going to go with what you said last year with Cleveland. I never really thought of Cleveland as much of an organizational play as you did, but you were right on last year when you said it. You said over, Dave said over, I said under. I was wrong. I'm going to turn back, and I'm going to pick Cleveland over this year. Minnesota, I think, is a really tough one, and part of it depends on what you want to do with Chicago. One thing I do like about Minnesota is if Kenta Maeda can be healthy, and that Pablo Lopez acquisition, their bullpen's a little deeper, and they always have had a good lineup. I mean, you've got Buxton, who God only knows what he's going to do. You get Reyes out of that lineup, so that takes away a really good contact bat. But there are some other people who can fill in. So I'm talking myself around because I think 84.5 is actually really tough for Minnesota, but I'm going to go slightly over. I think the Twins win about 85, 86 games. The next one that we've got here, so we've got the Chicago White Sox, and they're sitting at 83.5. And then why don't I just give you the White Sox alone, and I'll give you the other teams. The White Sox 83.5. Shane, what do you got for them?
I think this goes back to how you led off the entire podcast with some of the rule changes. You're going to see the White Sox having to battle more against the NL than they will against this terrible division. And I like Dylan Cease, but I'm not as big on Lynn as some other people are. And I think after that in the rotation, it really goes downhill. I'm taking the under on the Chicago White Sox.
Who do you have, Dave?
I'm going to take the under also. Again, it's another case of where it's not going to be that much under, but it's going to be under.
Yeah, I think I was going back and forth if I wanted to do over for these guys and under for the Twins. I think this lineup's going to mature, and hopefully Jimenez can be a little bit more healthy. And Andrew Vaughn, I think, is going to take a big step forward this year. It's a solid rotation. I'm going to go for about 83 wins or so. They're going to be right on that borderline, but I got under for them. The next two we've got are the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers. And since I'm still thinking on the fly, I'm going to give it to you, Dave. They're both 68.5 for their over-under. KC 68.5, Detroit 68.5.
Oh boy, that's hard.
I gave it to you first.
They're both 68.5, huh? Well, let's go with Detroit under, KC over. I'm giving KC over because I think Aroldis Chapman has a very surprising comeback year. He'll end up closing for them, though he'll probably be traded at the deadline.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm going to go the other way. and I'm going to regret this. I'm going to go over for Detroit and under for KC, and only for this reason. Detroit was that team that got all these free agents and tried to make the next jump up after a surprising year in 2021. And everybody was thinking, okay, well, now they added Baez, and now they added one other player. But I'm trying to remember, they made a couple of key additions last year, and everybody kind of thought, okay, this is it. They'll make the jump up and they'll do it. Eduardo Rodriguez is the other player I was thinking of. So they made those two big ticket signings. Everyone goes, okay, so they should progress and do up. They took the step back. Those players are still there. They've gotten a year older. They had a lot of bad injury luck last year. I'm going to go over with them. I'm going to go under with Kansas City. And I actually really love this Kansas City lineup with Bobby Witt Jr., Melendez, Pasquantino. I think there's some good young hitters in the lineup. Dave, you called me out in this last year. Zach Greinke is one of the main guys in that rotation. You've got Jordan Lyles, who actually was solid with the Orioles, but really isn't that great of a pitcher. He's just an innings eater. And then you've got, I feel like Chris Bublik, they've been waiting for him to break through for like 4 years. I just don't love this rotation. So I'm going to go over Detroit, under KC. Shane?
Whenever you get in a bind, like trying to figure out what to do with the Tigers and the Royals, you always have to ask yourself, what would Brown do for you? And Dave Brown nailed both of these. He's got the under on Detroit, which is a great play because this pitching is terrible. And Kansas City is going to be the Orioles of 2022. I like Kansas City to not only go over 68.5, I think they're going to fly by it. I really like Kansas City, not as some contender, but to be way above this number, I've got Kansas City going over.
Okay, well, this might be something we have to circle back to with our best bets. We'll see if that's something that you go with. Circle me, Bert. Whatever you want to say.
Circle me, Bert. Yep.
NL Central now. We're starting to get to the divisions where our favorite teams play. And this is one of my favorite parts as we do this because we get to see the angles on how we do things. So I'm going to start off. Shane, we're going to go just pick the rest of the teams first, then we'll get to your beloved Cubs. But first, let's start off at the bottom. Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Cincinnati 65.5, Pittsburgh Pirates 67.5.
I'm going to play this one the same way I played it last year. I'm going to go under on Cincinnati, and I'm going to go over on Pittsburgh. I think these are always these are becoming difficult teams to try to project year in and year out, but I just don't like what I see from Cincinnati, and I kind of get the feeling Pittsburgh will be right over that 67.5 threshold.
We led off last year's podcast by talking about the city of Pittsburgh and how they were big fans of mine because I was the only one who said they'd be good 2 years ago. Hey, good news, Pittsburgh. I got you again. Over. Pittsburgh, I actually think I view Pittsburgh similar to the way you view KC, Shane. I actually think Pittsburgh has some good young players who are finally ready. They're in like year 4 of this rebuild. They're kind of maybe a half a year to a year behind the Orioles. The Orioles kind of stepped it up last year. I think Pittsburgh does it this year. I'm going to go over Pittsburgh like you did. And I am actually I'm going to go under Cincinnati because I think they are just starting this rebuild process. Dave?
And give me those numbers again.
It is Pittsburgh at 67.5 and Cincinnati at 65.5.
Yeah, Cincinnati. Yeah, I'm going over with Cincinnati. Gosh, they're bad though, but I'm going over with them. The 65 seems low. I'm going, I'll go over with Pittsburgh also. I'm going to go over with both.
One thing I'm going to give you is we might not know a lot of these names, but actually Cincinnati has some pretty good young pitchers for a team that's just starting to rebuild. Hunter Green is very good.
I like Hunter Green. He gets beat up a lot, but he's got the look of a future star.
And he's just got such great stuff. I mean, he just strikes out a ton of guys. Nick Lodolo is actually another one who was actually pretty solid last year. I don't really know much about it, but Graham Ashcraft is another guy who's just popping up as people talk about names of young pitchers who could break out. So I think they have a solid staff. The lineup, I don't know very many names in the line. I'll run through real quick. Jonathan India, Jake Fraley, Will Myers, Tyler Stevenson, Spencer Steer, TJ Friedel, Jason Vosler, Jose Barrero, and Will Benson. Tell me how many of those guys you've heard of as we head into the year.
I don't know. I wish you read that before I said over.
Yeah, I did that by design, just to see if I could trap you into it. So we'll go to the next teams, and this is one of our favorite things to do. And I guess I'll just jump in on this. The I would say that the number is actually fairly high this year, but St. Louis sitting at 88.5, Milwaukee sitting at 86.5. I think you both know my rule about St. Louis. I just turn off the brain when it comes to St. Louis, and I just go over. It's an organizational play. I feel like St. Louis is good for 90 wins. You know, when you look at the roster and you break it down, you might find some things that would worry you about them. Adam Wainwright being hurt in the World Baseball Classic and maybe not starting the season with them is one of them. Jack Flaherty also isn't really exactly where he needs to be. He was great a couple of years ago, but has really been battling injuries on the way back. The one thing I always love about them, I just feel like whether they're good prospects or bad prospects, they always develop good hitters. This lineup is loaded with good young hitters. And then you stack that up on top of Goldschmidt and Arenado. It's just a really good lineup. So I'm going to go over with St. Louis, and I'm going to go under with Milwaukee. I don't know. I always pin Milwaukee thinking that they'd be good based on their deep bullpen. I feel like when they traded Hader last year, now you're taking away some of the layers of depth that bullpen has. It's still a pretty solid team, and I like the lineup. And obviously Burns and Woodruff are as good of a 1-2 as anyone you're going to get in baseball. I still just think they're a tad under, maybe 84, 85. What do you have, Shane?
I'm with you on Milwaukee, and I think the new schedule is going to hurt them. They're another team that I think stands out as a team that could get hurt by the schedule. So I'm going to go under on Milwaukee. And the very first team that I filled out when I started this process, I went straight to St. Louis and I put the over. I don't need to see who's on their team. I don't need to know who's managing them. I don't care if they're playing in the Philippines. I'm taking the Cardinals over every year.
Dave, who do you got out of that? Do you need the numbers again?
No, I'm taking the Cardinals under.
Under, okay.
Yeah. I thought a lot about this throughout the day, actually, the Cardinals, especially because of this organizational love that we all have for them and how they're an automatic over. I just don't, I see the holes this year. That lineup looks good, but I see the holes in the pitching, and you brought them all up, Steve. I'm going under, and I will go over with Milwaukee.
Over with Milwaukee. Okay, so we have the final team here, which is obviously a Shane Sandersfeld favorite. Interesting for both you and me that our favorite teams have the same over/under number. Chicago Cubs setting at 76.5. We'll start off with that, Dave and I, and then we'll let you actually tell us why we should do whatever we should do. Dave, I'll start off 76.5 with Chicago. What do you got?
You just said you're going to start off.
Oh, I said I wouldn't have.
I am going, 76.5 is pretty close to where I think that they'll land. I'm going to go over, but I don't think they'll reach 80 wins.
Yeah, Dave and I have actually talked a lot about this team offline in the sense that they were a rebuilding team and they did something very different than what a lot of other teams do. When teams are rebuilding, they often refrain from handing out big contracts. But they didn't hand out huge contracts to anyone except for really Dansby Swanson. The rest of the contracts for like Taillon are kind of like middle level contracts.
I don't understand the Jameson Taillon signing, Shane. You're gonna have to explain that one to me.
This is where we've gone with this. So, but for me, I think this is enough to get them to 78, 79 wins. And I think this is what some of the teams who are in the misery rebuilding ask for is, can you just spend some money on the places that we know suck just to make the team a little better, to make it a little bit more palatable for the fans? And I do think Chicago's done this. I don't think this will result in anything big, but I think it results in enough to get them over this over/under. So
Shane, they had the weirdest offseason of any other team. Jameson Taillon for 4 years makes no sense to me. Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner was great last year. Why are they moving him? And then so they make those big commitments. That's something that you would do to be the last piece of the puzzle. And then they do what building teams do, and they get a Bellinger, which is like a lottery ticket.
Did you guys both take the over?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
You both took the over. I love how you supported your decisions, but you should both know you were taking the collar. You can replay what I said in 2022 and replay it here for 2023. We're just taking a bad hand, reshuffling it, and the cards have moved around, but it's the same cards. I don't understand any of the signings either. I get what you're saying about trying to bring some things in, but it feels a lot like what the Twins used to do, back in the early 2000s where, hey, we brought in Shannon Stewart and Rondell White, but they were past their prime. Nobody else wanted them. I don't understand the Bellinger move. I don't think it's going to pan out. And I just don't think you can bank on Wisdom, Horner, Happ to be the guys that get it done. It's a decent staff, but it's not going to compete with Milwaukee or St. Louis. This team is going to be in the same situation. And what hurt them last year is you're going to get to the end of the season and they're going to deal players because they're not going to be in contention, and under 76.5 will hit easily. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, I think another thing to look at with this too is what we were just talking about, Pittsburgh and the Reds. And if Pittsburgh makes that jump, this becomes harder for the Cubs. The one thing that, as I'm looking at the NL, is I see one really terrible team and I see a couple of other not great teams. But other than that, it's actually pretty solid across. So that could be tough when you start spreading out the games against different divisions and stuff like that. So that I get what you're saying there, but I don't mind that pitching staff. Wisniewski can be okay. I know we talked about Stroman last year. I won't waste the time on that. And I think that Talion, if he's healthy, can be pretty good. But anyways, you go under, we went over. So that will be, yeah, we'll see how that goes in terms of that. That'll be an interesting one to look at. And it's interesting how we're, like I said, the Orioles and the Cubs are kind of stuck right in that same area.
Yep.
Let's go to the NL East, which is surprisingly one of Dave's worst divisions to prognosticate. He's a little too close to it for Dave, not to call you out on what you do bad, because you've done a lot of other picks great. You have the best record of all of us. But Atlanta and Miami, you are 0-3 the last 3 years with both of them. So those two teams have kind of tripped you up. So what better place to start then with Atlanta and Miami for Dave to go? And Atlanta is sitting at 96.5 and Miami is at 75.5.
Oh, goodness. 75. This is hard, especially when you tell me how bad I am. Now I have no confidence either. Atlanta is what, 96.5?
Atlanta's 96.5. Yep.
And they won what, 101 last year?
Yes.
Let's go Atlanta under.
Okay.
And Miami
We all
under.
struggled with this
Under.
We all went over last year with Miami. We all got burned on it. So Shane, I'll go with you. You actually are 3-0 against the Braves with the Braves. And you were the one who 2 years ago picked them to win the World Series and said they wouldn't win the division, but they would win the World Series. It was a perfect pick 2 years ago. So what do you have to say about Atlanta and Miami?
I think Atlanta's going to be in a dogfight with the Mets and the Phils all year long. I don't think the team that wins this division is hitting 98, 99, 100 wins. I've got Atlanta going under. I think they'll be close to 96.5, but I think Atlanta and the Mets and the Phils are going to beat the tar out of each other. And I don't think that the Braves will hit that number of 96.5. For Miami, Miami is a team I really like. I took over last year, didn't work out so well. I'm going to try it again this year. I think Segura was a great addition. I think they're going to be closer to 500 than they are around 75.5. So I really like Miami. I'm going to go over.
I think I'm with you on both of these. I'm going to go under with Atlanta. I just look at it, and I'll get to this with the Mets. I just look at it, and I think Atlanta is the team that runs kind of hot and cold a little bit. They really caught fire to just catch the Mets. I mean, but they're a really good team, obviously. But to me, I think they're a team that's going to, they're going to be in a battle. And I think they win right around 93, 94 games and are probably close to winning the division. So I'll go under on them as well. Miami, I'm going to go over as well. It's just too tantalizing of a pitching staff. You got Alcantara, Luzardo. Cueto's in there as a veteran. That's, who knows what's going to happen with him. But then you got Trevor Rogers, Cabrera. I just like this team. There's other guys like Max Meyer waiting to come up. They have a lot of great arms in this system, and it's a solid enough lineup. I'm going to go over. The next two teams that we got for this, we have the Nationals sitting at 59.5, and then we've got the Phillies sitting at 89.5. You're right about this, Dave. This is a really difficult division to look at, and I'm going to go with these. And I think we all went under on Philly, and we all got burnt last year. And Philly was one of those teams that I was sitting there tracking our over-unders for most of the year and just looking and going, check, yeah, we got this one. Check, yeah, we're smart. we know what we're doing here. And then all of a sudden with 2 weeks to go, I looked up and I was like, I think we're all taking the L on this one. So they just really caught fire, and it's obviously a team that gets a lot of confidence. I got to say, though, I don't have a lot of faith in this Philadelphia team to be a team that does this all year. They just felt like they really caught lightning in a bottle as they came down the stretch last year. Now, obviously, they have a solid pitching staff, and it's a team that I think it's a team that I think can be, in the mix for the division. But I'm going to go under on Philly, and then for Washington. God, this team is a lot like that Oakland team, and they're just, you look at the lineup, and I don't really like a lot about it. Let me just read the lineup for you. You do have a former Met and Dominic Smith, but Lane Thomas, Dominic Smith, Joey Meneses, one of the success stories from last year, Corey Dickerson, Yeimer Candelaria, Luis Garcia, Keber Ruiz, CJ Abrams, and Victor Robles. I don't love that lineup. So, I mean, I'm going to go under. I just, I know I'm falling in this trap of picking the bad teams to be really bad. This never works out very well. I always get burned, and we'll get burnt on one of Oakland or Washington, but I just think they both suck, and I'm going to go under on them. Shane, what do you got for these two teams again? Washington 59.5, Philadelphia 89.5.
It was a coin flip for me on who was worse between Washington and Colorado, because I'm not big on Colorado at all, but Washington, they're not any good either. I mean, 59.5. I couldn't find a way to take the over. I know what you're saying. It's hard to go under here, but I'm going to do it. I just don't think that they're any good. And I really like Atlanta and the Mets and Philly to continue to do what they do. And for Philly, you kind of touched on this a little bit, Steve. They just have this crazy sort of confidence, this swag about them. And when they catch a hot streak, boy, they can really ride it. I'm going to go Philly in the over, even though they're really trying to bait you to take the under here. I think Philly's going to be in the mix, and I think they're going to get to 90 wins.
Who do you got out of these two teams, Dave?
Philly, yeah. Gosh, is it possible that the Mets, the Braves, and Philly and the Phillies are in the 90 win range? I guess the math could work out that way. I'm gonna go over with the. You know what? I'm going under with the Phillies. You see, here's where the heart gets in the way. And this is why I'm not good at this when I do the NL East. And I'm going to go over with Washington, even though they are as bad as you say they are and as we think they are, but they'll get that 60th win. So.
I think that common sense tells you that if picking one of Washington and Oakland makes sense, and even though I just read that lineup, there's some people I know in that lineup. The Oakland lineup, there's just nothing. Like, I just don't know any of that. So if you're going to take out of those two terrible teams one over, I think you got to go with.
You know what the Nationals do have? They have a pretty good bullpen. So if they ever have the lead, I think they can hold the lead.
Okay, that's a fair way to look at it. We're going to go, so we'll let Dave go last on this other one, and I can start off. New York Metropolitans sitting at 94.5. And I'm going to say this, I think I've said this a couple times. We've talked about Buck Showalter's lack of postseason success. He's only won one playoff series in his entire career. There's not a better regular season manager than Buck Showalter. I really have confidence in him to get this team to 96, 97 wins. I actually think the Mets win the division. Where I'm wondering, and I know where you're freaking out a little bit, Dave, is injury like Edwin Diaz. Like, are they going to be missing the right people that they need and everyone that they need to step up when it comes to postseason play, where Buck Showalter really historically has not done really well. But, you could have 4 or 5 injuries, and Buck Showalter specialized at this, getting everyone to circle the wagons, get everyone to play a role, and to be a great regular season baseball team. So I absolutely love the over for the Mets. Where they end up going in the postseason, I think really a lot of it depends on who stays healthy and who doesn't. They obviously have a really solid lineup up and down. And Scherzer and Verlander, 1 and 2, it can't get any better than that. But how long can these guys pitch at that level? Let's Scherzer 38 and Verlander's 40, and it's just amazing how these guys keep doing it. But you just worry from year to year. Dave and I have also talked about this, and Senga is a pitcher who really intrigues me. I actually really love those types of signings. Just go kind of off the radar, go for the pitcher from Japan who nobody knows about with the upside. I think he's going to give them a good season too. So I'm going to go over. What do you got, Shane?
I'm going to ride I'm waiting for Verlander to fall apart. I tried last year. I'm going to try again. those guys, I'm not real comfortable with Scherzer and Verlander's age and the wear and tear and a big number. And I don't like the loss of Diaz. That does concern me. So as much as I'd like to take the over for Dave's sake, I'm going to go under on the Mets.
You know, Dave has been not very good at this NL East, but the one thing he's been better at than both me and you, Shane, is he is, I believe he's 3-0 on his own team. Yeah, I think he's 3-0 on the Mets in 3 seasons. So he's known exactly what the Mets were going to do. So we'll see what he says today. What do you got?
What's
For
the number?
Mets?
94 and a half?
94 and a half.
Yeah, if I take myself out of myself and I look at it from a non-Mets fan, I too would be looking at Verlander and Scherzer and expecting them to break down this year, just because it just seems like something that would happen. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but if I were a fan of another team doing this, that's what I would look at. They remind me of the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Brooklyn Nets. I will go under, but I preface it by saying this, although I guess I'm saying it afterwards, so I'm not prefacing it. They'll win like 92, 93. The Braves will win like 92, 93, 94, 95. The Phillies will win 87. They're going to be really packed in there.
So it's take my medicine time for me and talk about teams that we're all terrible picking at. The team that I just suck at and I just can't get right is the New York Yankees. This team drives me crazy when it comes to this. I can never decide if they're going to be good or bad. Last year, we were all so confident that there was no way they were going to reach their over-under, and they crushed it. They won 99 games last year, and I think their over-under was like 93. I look at them again, and this is sort of what we're talking about the Mets. Like, this pitching staff is already banged up. Luis Severino is not reliable. Carlos Rodon, who I actually think will get healthy and be okay, but he's somebody who has an injury history. And then Frankie Montes is going to be out for a while. So what are you left with? Obviously, Garrett Cole's going to be pretty good. Clark Schmidt, I think, is actually a candidate to take a big jump and be pretty good. Nestor Cortez, I don't have any idea how he's so good, but he is pretty good. And then we've got Domingo Germán. Now, the lineup, the one thing I really like about this team, and the one thing that has me tempted to go over 94 and a half, is just some of the young energy that gets inserted into this lineup. Anthony Volpe, and then you've got Oscar Cabrera, and you've got some other good young players who I think will get a chance to be part of this roster throughout the year. And what I look at that seems stale to me is seeing LeMahieu again, Donaldson again, Hicks again. Some of these same guys, they're not getting any better, but I like the upside of some of the young players. And the one thing the Yankees always have is a really, really good bullpen. Still 94 and a half. I'm going to go slight under. I think the Yankees win 93 to 94 games. I'm going under the Yankees. So I'm leaving the door open for you guys to just say over and just have an easy pick here for both of you. Shane, what do you got?
I'm going to try to think like Vegas. And last year, the Yankees completely flew the total, which was insane. I come back and look and I see the Yankees at 94 and a half. And I think everybody wants to bet on the Yankees. Everybody wants to take their props. They're all going to be going for the over with a number that's this low coming off what they did last year. So I'm going to try to think like Vegas, and I'm going to go under with the Yankees here.
What do you have, Dave? And then the one thing I'm going to add to this that I forgot to say is, can Aaron Judge have a year anywhere close to what he did last year?
No, impossible. I'm going over.
That's smart. You just bank against me. I think that makes the most sense. The next two teams I'm going to go with, we've got Toronto sitting at 90 and a half. We've got Tampa Bay sitting at 89 and a half. Dave, I'm going to start off with you. Last year, just to say this, Toronto, you guys both went over. I was the skeptical one, and I actually was right on this one where Toronto didn't quite reach what they needed to do. But again, 90 and a half this year, Tampa Bay 89 and a half. What do you got, Dave?
Gosh, it's so tough. Tampa Bay, I just never know how it is that they're good, but they're always good. And if you listen to everybody else, a lot of people are high on Toronto this year. So it's influencing me. I'm going over on Toronto and under on Tampa Bay.
What do you have, Shane?
I'm going to go over on Toronto as well. I really like what they have. I think they're a World Series contender for sure. And, I've got a little bit of regression coming in for the Yankees. So I'm going to make that up on the other side with Toronto. And then when it comes to Tampa, I just view them as the AL version of the Cardinals. I think that they always find a way to get it done. 89.5. I want them to prove me wrong. I'm going to go with the over on Tampa and on Toronto.
I know I'm going to go over with Toronto. Last year, I thought Toronto was overvalued. Everybody loved them and they loved the lineup. This year, I actually like their lineup a little bit more. You could look at guys like Whit Merrifield for a full year. You look at Kevin Kiermaier. I think they have like a little bit more of a balanced lineup where they can do more and they're not just all going up there and hitting home runs. And I just think this pitching staff really can only get better. They added Bassett. Manoah is just an unbelievable pitcher. Gosman, I think, can be better than last year. And even Jose Barrios, can he be as bad as he was last year? He was terrible last year. So he's got to be better. So I like the over with Toronto. Tampa Bay is a super hard one. It's a good organizational play. And I know they're trying to trick me here. Last year, I said 88.5 is higher than they usually have them. Now they're at 89.5. And I went over last year and got burned by it. I still am going to go over. I just think they're like they're like a 90 win team, 91 win team. So I'm going to go over with Tampa Bay and probably end up regretting it. Let's go quickly to the one-off in the Boston Red Sox. They're at 78.5. What do you got, Dave?
78.5. Boston Red Sox, I'm going under with them.
How about you, Shane?
I think they're going to close out more games this year, and I like the Kenley Jansen addition. I'm going to go over on Boston.
Yeah, I think Boston's a better team than people think. I feel like last year, they do this every other year thing.
Yeah.
You think they're going to be good, they suck. You think they're going to be bad, they're good. I think this is the year where everyone thinks they're going to be bad. I think they're better this year. I think they're like an 81 win team, and I'm going to go over on them as well. So I'm going to let you guys take my favorite team and dissect them. Shane, I'll start with you. You were the only one last year who said over for the Orioles, and you got it right. I'm actually pretty mad at myself that at 62.5, I still didn't have enough faith in the Orioles, and they smashed the over. 83 wins last year. What do you got from this year?
To go from 62.5 to 76.5, that is a huge jump. And while I felt pretty comfortable with taking over 62.5, I just can't find a way to do 76.5 for the O's. And trust me, I'm rooting for them as much as you are. I think it's a great when the Orioles do well, but that is a huge number in a very, very difficult division. To me, the best division in all of baseball. I can't see it. I got to go under on the O's.
Fewer games this year against that division. That could make the difference, Shane. I love that Orioles. I love that Orioles lineup. That is a good lineup. Dubious about the pitching. The starters worry me, but they got that young guy that's coming up, right? He's supposed to be very good.
Grayson Rodriguez. Yep.
Yeah. I'm going over with the Orioles.
It worries me that we were both wrong about this and Shane was right about it. And Shane has under this year, and now I'm probably going to head to the over. The one thing I like is I don't think the lineup, I agree with you in some senses, Dave. They have some really good young players to start the season, but where I think this lineup is actually really impressive is there's going to be 2 or 3 pieces that are going to be different in about 2 to 3 months. They've got a lot of good young players coming up.
That's even more impressive. That lineup, I look at, it's good. It's a solid lineup.
Yeah, and I think there's guys, Santander and Mountcastle are solid, but you look at guys like Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson, and if they can just take the next step up, or even Rutschman can just do what he did last year for a whole year, I'm excited about that. The question is, look at this bottom, like 6 through 7, Austin Hayes, Adam Frazier, Jorge Mateo, Kyle Stowers. A lot of Orioles fans that I talk to, I think there's guys in the minors that we think are probably better than those players. It's just a question of, do they play well enough to get called up and take those players' place?
Adam Frazier just a year ago was a pesky 300 hitter.
Yeah, he was solid, and I think that's what they're looking for out of him. I agree. You've also got Ramon Arias, who's a good utility player who won a Gold Glove last year. The pitching staff is really, this is where this team, the pitching staff and the bullpen, the pitching in general is where I don't know what to expect. The bullpen was awesome last year. They basically got to those 83 wins on the back of the bullpen. It was phenomenal. In terms of the rotation, they added Kyle Gibson and Cole Irwin, who they're solid pitchers. They're probably as good as what they had last year, but it really depends. These guys have to get deep into games. Kyle Braddis is a good young pitcher. Dean Kremer took a step forward last year. Anyways, I say all this, I'm just moving this podcast to be longer and longer, but I like the over for the Orioles as well. But I don't think it's much more than this. I was talking to some Orioles fans and I said I have them penciled in somewhere around 79 to 82 wins. And so that's over. I don't think they're going to explode onto the scene. I do think they're going to take a tiny step back from last year, but I think this is an exciting year. And I think some of the younger guys really start maturing. And I'm really excited for the momentum this team will have at the end of the year and how well they can do as they push forward. So I'm going over with the Orioles. So that's it. We got all of them done here. We're sitting at about the 45 minutes. So no, I'm not going to hit. Your over is going to be good for you. But we got best bets now. And so I'm going to start off. And Shane, do you have best bets that you'd like to circle as you go forward with this? We'll do 5. We'll go through one at a time and we'll round it up here.
I'm going to start. I'm going to go to the AL Central. And my first best bet is the Chicago White Sox under. I feel pretty good about that one. Like I said, I think the schedule is going to bite Chicago in the tail, and I think they're going to be under 83.5.
Dave, who do you have for your first one?
My first best bet are the San Diego Padres over 93.
Over. Okay. For me, I like the Arizona. I'm going to go with Shane's pick last year. I like Arizona. They're sitting at 74.5. I'm going to go over. That is my first best bet. Dave, who do you have for your next best bet?
Kansas City Royals.
Kansas City Royals, and you had them as over, right? Yeah, over, right?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I'm going to surprise a little bit here. This is I'm going to end up regretting this, but I like Pittsburgh over. I'm going to go Pittsburgh over. Shane, who's your second one?
Houston and the under. I feel very good about that with the division that they are in, and I think that number's too tall.
Okay. For me, I'm going to look at this, and I am going to. Dave, you're going to hate this, and I'm going to do it for a second year in a row. I love Buck Showalter in the regular season. I'm going over. Over on the Mets is a best bet.
I want you to be right. I love it.
Yep. Dave, next over under for you, or next best bet for you.
Well, the Mets under is my best bet.
Who do you have, Shane?
And I hope I'm wrong.
I'm going to stay in Dave's division, except I'm going to go with the upstarts from Miami. I'm taking Miami in the over.
Miami in the over. Who's your next one, Dave?
The opposite of one of Shane's. I'm going the Houston Astros over.
Houston Astros over. That's a big one because they have the highest number. Okay, so you've got over. For me, I'm going to go with. I had one and I just forgot what I was going to say. I am going to go with. I just had one in my brain and it just disappeared. I am going to go with the Toronto over. That's the one I was looking for. I like Toronto this year. I didn't like them last year. I'm going Toronto over. I think we've each picked 4, right? So I think, Shane, what's your 5th one?
I am going to double down against my good friends, Steve and Dave, and I'm going to alienate my entire fan base. I love the Chicago Cubs under 76.5.
So I'm the only one right now. Maybe I'm going to have to circle my favorite team somehow. You and Dave have both been negative on your own favorite team. Who's your next, Dave, who's your next best bet?
Cincinnati over.
Cincinnati over. Wow. For my last one, I'm going to go Oakland A's under. I just think this is a really terrible team. Okay, I'm going to have to circle back and figure out who I picked. Let's go back through these real quick because So I picked Arizona over. I picked Oakland under. I picked Mets over. I picked Toronto over. And let's see here. I'm trying to remember. I circled these all really quickly. So for Shane, you've got under Houston. You've got under Chicago. You've got under, or you've got over
I've got
Miami.
under on both Chicago's.
Under on both Chicago's, the Cubs and the White Sox. Okay. And then, okay, who's your other one? You had one more.
Under on both Chicago's, under on Houston, and the over on Miami.
Over on Miami, that's right. Okay. And Dave, you had under Mets. You had over San Diego, right?
That's right.
You had over Houston, over Kansas City, and over Cincinnati.
Right.
Okay, there we go.
So
Okay,
Steve,
let's.
did we do 5 each? 5 each?
We did
did.
5 each. Did I give you all yours?
I had 4. My last one is Arizona over. Arizona over. I'm joining you on Arizona over.
You're joining me on Arizona over, and that was one you picked last year. You love Arizona, and I do
do.
too. Okay, let's go for, so you got division winners. We're gonna do division winners real quick. Let's go, Dave. Why don't you start us off with your NL division winners, and then Shane will go with you.
I'm going to go with these following division winners. Now, is it possible to pick the Mets under, the Braves under, and have the Mets be the division winner? Well, I'm going with the Mets, and you can work out the math.
Yeah.
The Brewers and the Padres.
What do you have, Shane?
I'm going to go with the Braves, the Cardinals, and the Padres.
Braves, Cardinals, Padres. I am going to go with the Mets as well. I'm going to go with the Cardinals, and I'm actually going to go with the Padres. So I got everything except for the other ones. So we got AL East, AL Central, AL West. Shane, who do you have for those?
The AL East, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. AL Central, Cleveland, and the AL West, I'm going with Houston.
Tampa Bay, Cleveland, and Houston. Who do you have, Dave?
Yankees, Cleveland, and Houston.
Yankees, Cleveland, and Houston. I'm going to throw a quick curveball in here. I don't know. This is going to be ridiculous. I'm going to take Minnesota. I'm going to take Toronto. And I'm going to take Seattle. We got 3 wild cards right in each league. So give me your 3 NL wild cards. Shane.
I'm going to go with Milwaukee, Philly, and the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Milwaukee, Philly, LA Dodgers. Who do you have, Shane? Who do you have, Dave?
The Braves, the Phillies, and the Dodgers.
Braves, Phillies, and Dodgers. I'm going to go with the Dodgers. I'm going to go with the, let's see, I'm going to go with the Dodgers. I'm going to go with the, let's look here. I'm going to go with the Dodgers. I'm going to go with the Braves. And I'm going to go with let's go with something tricky here. I'm going to go with the Giants. AL wild cards. So the AL wild cards, I am going to go with the Yankees. I'm going to go with the Astros, and I'm going to go with the Indians. Who do you have, Dave?
Toronto, Minnesota, and Seattle.
Toronto, Minnesota, Seattle. And who do you have, Shane?
Seattle, the New York Yankees, and Toronto.
Seattle, New York Yankees, Toronto. Okay, so now let's get to it. What do you have who do you have as your NL champion and your AL champion? Shane, start us off with this. Who do you have to winning the NL?
The Atlanta Braves.
Dave, who do you have winning the NL?
The San Diego Padres.
I'm going to go with the New York Mets. AL for me, I'm going to go, I think I'm picking the same World Series that you picked last year, Shane. I'm going to go Toronto.
Nice.
Dave, do you want to go and pick Tampa Bay as your AL and pick the same World Series that I picked, knowing that I'm always a year late to these things?
I am going to pick the Cleveland Indians.
Okay.
Woo.
Who do you have, Shane?
I will take your Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Okay. So Dave, you have San Diego versus Cleveland. Shane, you have Atlanta, Tampa Bay. I have Mets, Toronto. I'm going to take the Blue Jays to win it all. Shane, who do you have?
I'm taking Tampa Bay.
San Diego for me. We lost Geller. He's frozen in time. Snap out of it.
That's what happens when you go over 45 minutes. How do you freeze up right after the World Series predictions?
I know.
He was shocked.
Let's get him on speakerphone. Oh, we lost him. Let's get him on speaker. Oh, are we still recording?
You're
Yeah.
the captain now.
Let's get him on speakerphone.
I froze, I know.
You want to wrap this up on speakerphone? You're still recording.
Hold on, I'm just waiting to see if it comes back,
Okay.
but I don't know if it will. Give me a minute.
Sure.
Am I on speakerphone right now?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, we're live. Okay. Well, let's just pick it. Okay. So we've got but the problem is who's gonna hit stop on record?
I think once we all leave, it'll stop, right?
That's probably true. Okay, so you said San Diego or Cleveland. Who'd you say again?
The Padres.
Padres. Okay, so you got San Diego, Shane has Tampa Bay, I have Toronto. And that will be the end of the episode, as we're obviously having technical difficulties. So you can go back and watch the other thing. We'll tag it for you. And once again, we thank you for following us and checking with our baseball picks. We will see you next year. Thank you for having everything. Any final comments from both of you before we sign off?
Yes. If you bet all of our picks, I'm pretty sure you'll come up ahead.
That's usually been the way it has been in the past. So I think that's a good way to do it. And then Shane, any last comments on this?
The only thing I can say is we can't do any worse than we did last year. So we are due for a major step up, which, as Dave said, I'm pretty sure we're going to hit.
Yeah, let's just remember we've been winners all the way up until last year, and even Dave was 500 last year, and I was 3-2 on best bets. So you still could have won some money with us last year. I think we'll be okay. We put a lot of thought into this. We'll do well. So we look forward to tracking the bets and going from there. Thank you again for joining with us, and have a great year. And we'll see what happens with the baseball season.
Play ball!
Play ball.